knock your knuckles on a wooden desk. I mean, you feel that sudden resistance, you hear the dull thud,
Yeah.
and your brain immediately registers a very comforting reality.
Right. It just tells you wood.
Exactly. Wood, solid matter, like a discrete object that genuinely exists. We implicitly trust our senses to map the world for us.
Yeah, we rely on the absolute undeniable rockness of a rock.
Right. And welcome to today's Deep Dive, where we are going to challenge exactly that. Because, well, it is the most fundamental evolutionary baseline we have.
Oh, absolutely. Our nervous systems are entirely optimized to navigate a world of distinct, separate objects, separated by empty space.
But today, we are unpacking a highly ambitious, potentially reality-shattering document that you shared with us. It's an abstract and metadata from a May 2026 Zenodo publication.
Yeah, it's quite a read.
It really is. It's titled The Manifesto of Relational Ontology Framework by an independent researcher named Maurizio Rizzari. And our mission for this deep dive is to basically figure out if this text is just, I don't know, abstract theoretical poetry, or if the author has actually deduced the literal mechanical structure of reality.
Which is a massive claim.
It is. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the central hook here is just staggering. This document isn't just theoretical musing. The author is literally arguing that solid matter is a complete illusion.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the sheer conviction of the presentation, and the format it uses to deliver such a world-breaking concept.
Right, because Zenodo is an open science platform.
Exactly. We are looking at a document published by an independent researcher on an open repository, so it carries this sort of rogue outsider science feel to it.
Yeah, but then it boldly titles itself a manifesto.
Which is such a strong word choice. I mean, the text does not couch its terms in maybes or what-ifs. It explicitly states this framework is not a metaphor and not one interpretation among many.
Wow.
Yeah, the author presents it as the unavoidable, absolute logical consequence of a highly specific mathematical truth.
It's just a breathtaking level of confidence. Like, I have the blueprint of the universe, and I am bypassing traditional peer-reviewed journals to hand it directly to the public.
It is a wild premise.
It really is.
Yeah.
But before we dive into the dense mathematical engine of all this, and the math gets intensely complicated, we need to establish the philosophical ground floor.
Right. We need to know what we're actually looking at.
Exactly. What exactly is this manifesto trying to tear down and replace? Because the text states that it builds upon Carlo Rovelli's relational quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
But then it claims to push those ideas much, much further.
Yeah.
So where do we start with Rovelli?
Well, to really grasp what Rizzari is attempting to do here, we have to understand the paradigm he is reacting against. In standard classical physics, like the kind we are all taught in high school, the universe is essentially a giant pool table.
Okay, a pool table.
Right. And the billiard balls are fundamental particles. They exist completely independently. They have mass, they have a specific location, and they possess objective properties regardless of whether anything is actually interacting with them.
So they are independent things just sitting in a void.
Exactly.
It's like, instead of a pool table, I think of it as the universe being a box of silent Lego bricks. They just sit in the dark, being bricks, completely self-sufficient.
That's a great analogy. But relational quantum mechanics, which Carlo Rovelli introduced back in the 1990s, fundamentally shatters that Lego brick model.
How so?
Well, Rovelli posited that a physical system like, say, an electron, does not have absolute objective properties on its own.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it simply does not possess a definitive speed or position in isolation. Those properties only become real, they only take on actual measurable values relative to another system they are interacting with.
Let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around the mechanics of that. Are we saying a particle literally doesn't have a location until it bumps into something else?
That is the core of the relational interpretation, yes. The interaction itself is what defines the physical property.
That is wild.
Think of the famous Schrodinger's cat thought experiment, where the cat in the box is supposedly both alive and dead until someone looks at it.
Right, right.
Rovelli's relational model solves that paradox by saying reality is relative to the observer. Relative to the cat is definitely alive or dead.
Obviously, the cat knows if it's alive.
Exactly. But relative to the scientist outside the box who hasn't interacted with the inside yet, the state of the cat is physically undefined for them.
Oh, I see.
And crucially, the observer triggering this reality doesn't need to be a conscious human. Like, a stray photon hitting an electron counts as an interaction.
So reality is less like a box of independent Lego bricks and more like a massive web of
A
conversations.
web of conversations,
Like
yes.
a brick only manifests as a solid brick the exact moment it communicates with another brick. If there's no conversation, there's no object.
You've nailed it. The relationships themselves become the fundamental reality. The things we perceive are merely the nodes or the intersection points in that endless web of interaction.
Okay, I understand how that solves problems in quantum physics, but I have to push back on the source material here.
Fair enough.
Ravelli is a deeply established, world-famous theoretical physicist. His relational interpretation applies primarily to the microscopic realm, the bizarre behavior of subatomic particles.
Right.
But now, Maurizio Rizzari, an independent researcher posting a 198 kilobyte PDF, claims to take Ravelli's life's work, go even further, and entirely dissolve the notion of macroscopic solid matter. I mean, isn't that an absurdly audacious leap?
Oh, it is incredibly audacious, but that audacity is the defining characteristic of the text. It is exactly why the document is titled a manifesto.
Ah, right. Not just a paper.
Exactly. A traditional academic paper is a quiet, incremental step forward within an established set of rules. A manifesto is a declaration of revolution.
Just throwing out the whole rule book.
He really is. Rizzari is demanding an end to our comfortable compromise. He is arguing that we need to stop treating this relational reality as just some bizarre quirk that only happens in particle accelerators.
So he's saying it applies to us right now.
Yes, the manifesto insists this is the absolute macroscopic truth of our everyday lives. It is an attempt to force us completely out of the realm of independent things and permanently into a reality governed entirely by relationships.
Okay, but if we assume for a moment that he's right, and reality is just this universe-spanning network of relationships, that raises a massive logistical problem for me.
What's the problem?
What stops that web from just being pure chaotic static? I mean, if things only exist as interactions, there has to be a rigorous rule book governing how these nodes talk to each other, right?
Right.
Otherwise, how do you produce something as highly organized as a tree or a human brain or a star?
That is a great point, and the text actually anticipates that exact problem. It provides a highly specific underlying mechanism to explain it.
Okay, let's hear it.
The manifesto claims that all of existence is dictated by one core mathematical structure. Quoting the text directly, reality is driven by the only non-associative normed division algebra, the octonions. In the paper, this is represented simply by the letter O.
Okay. Reading the phrase non-associative normed division algebra literally makes my brain feel like it's trying to digest lead.
It is a mouthful, I will give you that.
It just sounds like the kind of impenetrable, hostile jargon designed to make a layperson feel entirely lost. And for anyone listening whose eyes just glazed over, I am right there with you.
We can break it down?
Please do. Because the text thankfully offers a simplified definition referring to this concept simply as the 8 conditions. So let's strip away the abstract algebra for a moment. What are these 8 conditions actually doing?
Stripping away the jargon is definitely the best path forward to understand the author's argument. In this relational ontology framework, you basically have to abandon the idea of physical building blocks entirely.
So no particles at all.
None. Reality is not constructed out of quarks or tiny strings or spheres of vibrating energy. The ultimate building blocks are pure mathematics. There are these 8 specific conditions, essentially 8 rules of interaction.
The universe is built out of 8 rules of engagement. But wait, why 8? Why not 7 or 12 or a million rules?
Well, the number 8 isn't arbitrary. It actually comes from a very famous concept in mathematics called Hurwitz's theorem.
Hurwitz's theorem.
Yeah. And without getting bogged down in the equations, the theorem proves that if you want to create a number system where you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide without breaking logic, you can only do it in very specific dimensions.
Okay, like what dimensions?
You can do it in 1 dimension with real numbers. You can do it in 2 dimensions with complex numbers, 4 dimensions with quaternions, and finally, 8 dimensions with octonions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, mathematical law forbids it from working in any other dimension.
Okay, so Rizzari isn't just making up the number 8. He is pulling from a fundamental, established boundary in mathematics.
Exactly. But the text makes a massive deal out of one specific word describing these octonions, and that word is non-associative.
Non-associative. Okay, what does that change?
The non-associative nature of these 8 rules is the secret to everything in this framework. As you move up those dimensions we just talked about, from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8, you slowly lose mathematical properties.
Lose them.
Yeah. By the time you reach the 8-dimensional octonions, you lose associativity. Think about basic, everyday math. Addition is associative.
Right.
If you take the numbers 1, 2, and 3, if you add 1 and 2 first, you get 3. Add the remaining 3, you get 6.
And if I group the steps differently, like if I add 2 and 3 first to get 5 and then add the 1, I still get 6. The order of how I group the steps doesn't change the final outcome at all.
Exactly. But in a non-associative system, the grouping changes everything.
Really?
Yes. How things connect, the specific sequence of their relationships, fundamentally alters the outcome. The interactions become hypersensitive to the path they take.
So the order is basically everything.
It is everything. If event A interacts with event B, and then that combination interacts with event C, you get one reality. But if B interacts with C first, and then A joins in later, you get a completely different physical reality.
Wow.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, these aren't just equations on a blackboard. The author is arguing that these 8 non-associative rules are the literal operating system of the cosmos.
Let me map this onto something tangible just to see if I grasp the causality here. I'm thinking about baking.
Baking is a great way to look at it.
Because the sequence of interactions is literally the difference between food and garbage. Like if I mix flour and eggs into a batter and then fold in some sugar, I get a cake.
Right.
But if I change the sequence, if I put the flour and sugar in the oven for an hour, then crack raw eggs over the hot, burnt powder, I definitely do not have a cake.
No, you absolutely do not. The sensitivity of the sequence generates the diversity of the final product. Your baking analogy captures the mechanics perfectly.
Okay, so the sequence builds the complexity.
Yes, because in a standard associative universe, everything would be incredibly boring. Every interaction would result in the same uniform mush, regardless of how the elements bumped into each other.
Like the math always just equaling 6.
Exactly. But the non-associative nature of the octonions allows a highly limited set of rules, just 8 conditions, to scale up into infinite, unpredictable complexity.
See, that jump in scale is where I get lost. And I strongly suspect anyone listening is wondering the exact same thing right now.
How so?
We are jumping from 8 mathematical rules straight to the physical universe. I mean, how does an abstract math equation become something I can physically touch and feel?
That is the big question.
Yeah.
And the manifesto bridges that gap with a deeply provocative claim directed right at the reader.
What does it say?
The text explicitly states that you, like your physical body, your consciousness, are a recursive configuration of the same 8 conditions that generate hydrogen atoms, dark energy, and the thoughts you are thinking right now.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Recursive configuration. The moment I hear that phrase, I immediately think of fractals. You know, those infinitely complex geometric images like the Mandelbrot set.
Right, where the pattern repeats.
Exactly. You zoom in on the shape and you see the exact same shape repeated in miniature. And then you zoom in again and there it is again, just looping endlessly.
It's self-similarity across infinite scales. The pattern continuously feeds back into itself to build larger and larger structures.
So under Rizzari's framework, there's an 8-step mathematical dance. And at the most fundamental level, those 8 non-associative rules organize their interactions to manifest what we call a simple hydrogen atom.
Yes.
But then that same 8-step pattern just loops. It layers over itself, it scales up, it folds millions of times over. The atoms interact using the same rules to become molecules, which fold to become cells, which fold to become a human brain.
That is the exact mechanism he's describing.
It is so wildly recursive that the math eventually becomes the subjective, conscious thought you are having while listening to this audio right now. I mean, I am just the math of a hydrogen atom folded up billions of times.
It's a beautiful way to phrase it. Let's introduce the core terminology the author uses for this whole phenomenon. The Primordial Relational Field, or the PRF.
The Primordial Relational Field?
Right, and we need to define what a field actually means in this context. In modern physics, a field is a region where a specific effect can be felt, like a magnetic field dictating how iron filings move around a magnet.
Okay.
Currently, standard physics already views quantum fields as the fundamental reality, with particles simply being localized vibrations within those fields. Rizzari takes this established science and pushes it to the absolute, ultimate extreme.
By claiming the field isn't made of energy, but pure mathematics.
Precisely. In this manifesto, there are no separate electromagnetic fields or gravitational fields or distinct particles. Everything in existence is a recursive configuration of one single continuous mathematical field, the PRF.
Which brings us directly back to my knuckles knocking on the wooden desk from the start of the deep dive.
It does.
If there was only one continuous field spanning the entire universe, why does the desk feel so distinctly separate from my hand? I mean, the manifesto literally subtitles itself "The End of Separation." But I experience separation every single second of my life.
Sure, we all do. But the framework attributes that feeling of solidity and separation entirely to something called phase dynamics.
Phase dynamics, like states of matter,
Hmm.
like water turning into ice.
That is easily the most accessible way to visualize it. Think about ice, liquid water, and steam. They offer entirely different physical interactions. You can walk on ice, you can swim in liquid, and you breathe steam.
Right.
Yet, they are all composed of the exact same H2O molecules. The only difference is their energetic state, their density, their phase.
So the desk and my hand aren't different things.
According to the PRF, they are absolutely not. Your hand, the chair you sit in, the air filling the room, and the desk you knock on are all just different phase dynamics of the exact same continuous mathematical field.
Wow.
So when your knuckles hit the wood, you feel resistance. But it is not the resistance of two solid, independent objects colliding. It is simply the math of the field interacting with a different density or phase of itself.
So the electrical repulsion between the atoms in my hand and the atoms in the desk, that's just the 8 conditions negotiating a boundary that doesn't actually exist.
Exactly.
My brain is just a localized phase dynamic, neurologically interpreting a sensation created by another phase dynamic. It's literally math feeling math.
That's it. The illusion of solid matter is simply the human brain, which, remember, evolved to navigate these phase differences for survival, misinterpreting local density as absolute separation.
I want to address you, the listener, directly for a moment. Just think about what this implies for your physical place in the universe. We intuitively view ourselves as passengers inside a container. You consider yourself a discrete, defined object placed inside the vast, empty void of space.
Which is how we've always been taught to think.
Right. But in Rizzari's relational framework, the universe isn't a container at all. It is a single, unbroken fabric. You are a specific, highly complex fold in that exact fabric.
You are a continuous, dynamic extension of the exact same field that makes up the furthest reaches of dark energy.
Wait, dark energy?
Yeah, the text specifically mentions dark energy, which astrophysicists view as the energy of space itself, driving the expansion of the universe. In the PRF model, space is not an empty void. It is simply the baseline phase dynamic of the field.
That is incredible.
So the boundary of your skin is just a cognitive illusion.
You are the dark energy. You are the hydrogen atom. It completely annihilates the concept of me and the environment. Because the environment isn't something around you. It is you, just vibrating at a different phase.
And the author uses a very deliberate and aggressive phrase in the text, dissolving the notion of solid matter. Dissolving.
That's a very specific word choice.
It really is. It paints a picture of our current Newtonian understanding of physics as something rigidly frozen. And this relational octonionic math acts as a universal solvent, just melting all those separate solid objects back down into this fluid, continuous, primordial relational field.
It is an incredibly disorienting way to look at your own hands. Like you're just looking at a localized recursive loop of an infinite non-associative equation. It feels like science fiction or even mysticism, but the author is violently insistent that it is pure, rigorous logic.
The manifesto is absolutely uncompromising on that point. Rizzari isn't trying to sell a poetic worldview here. He's not saying, wouldn't it be beautiful to imagine we are all one?
Right, it's not a spiritual metaphor.
Not at all. The assertion is strictly mechanical. The non-associative math of the octonions dictates that there is no other logical possibility. This is the structural reality of the cosmos.
Well, we have covered an immense amount of conceptual ground today. Let's trace the logical through line of this manifesto, just to ensure we haven't lost the core thread before we wrap up.
Good idea.
We started with a wildly ambitious 2026 publication by an independent researcher, Maurizio Rizzari, who claimed to hold the actual mathematical blueprint of reality.
Then we examined how the text builds upon Carlo Rovelli's relational quantum mechanics. We looked at how the simple act of a photon interacting with an electron creates physical properties, expanding the idea that relationships, not independent objects, are fundamental to existence.
Right. And then we looked at the rigorous rulebook for those relationships, the non-associative math of the octonions. We explored Hurwitz's theorem to understand why the universe would rely on exactly 8 dimensions.
And we unpacked the core mechanism, an environment where the exact sequence of an interaction fundamentally changes the physical reality it creates.
The baking analogy.
Exactly. We mapped how that extreme sensitivity allows a simple set of 8 mathematical rules to recursively scale up. They layer over themselves endlessly to create the vast fractal complexity of the primordial relational field.
Which ultimately led us to the dissolving of the physical world. The realization that solid matter is an illusion created by phase dynamics. Human consciousness, oak desks, and dark energy are all just different folds in the exact same continuous mathematical fabric.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
So what does this all mean? We have this incredibly dense 198 kilobyte PDF that claims to map the very architecture of existence. Even if we accept the math, even if we accept the primordial relational field, where does this actually leave us in our everyday lives?
Well, the text itself offers a profound hint right in its abstract. It states that this framework explains how the structure of reality is possible, and crucially, it explains what it demands of us.
What it demands of us.
Yes, which raises a really important point. The author did not format this as a quiet academic proposal to be politely debated at a physics conference. A manifesto is inherently a call to action. It demands a radical shift in perspective.
I mean, it's hard to imagine going to the grocery store or feeling intense anger at a stranger in traffic when you have just internalized that you are a temporary phase dynamic of the exact same field as the person yelling at you.
It really does. It fundamentally short-circuits the way we categorize our experiences.
It forces a total confrontation with our baseline assumptions about existence. The theoretical physics naturally bleeds into the personal reality of the reader.
It blurs the line entirely between the scientific and the personal.
Which brings us to a final, lingering thought for you to take away from today's deep dive. We've spent all this time dissecting the mechanics of the primordial relational field, the non-associative math of those 8 conditions, and the neurological illusion of solid matter. We've looked deeply at the how of the universe, according to this manifesto.
But there's more to it than just the mechanics.
Exactly. Think about the personal demands of this framework. Go back to that solid oak desk from the very beginning. If you truly internalize the end of separation, if you accept, not just as a fascinating thought experiment, but as a literal physical fact, that there is absolutely no boundary between you, the people around you, the earth you walk on, and the fabric of dark energy stretching across the cosmos.
That you are all just the field.
Right. If you are all the exact same recursive mathematical field simply experiencing different phase dynamics, how does that complete dissolution of your own physical boundaries change the way you interact with the world when you wake up tomorrow morning?